Hey everybody, it's April Woodard and welcome to Virginia Insider, where we take a look at the people and places that make our coastal area unique. And today we have a wonderful guest, Queen Claudine Ellis. Now you may have seen her on our show, Coast Live, but she has so much more, and I have convinced her to tell me a little bit about herself personally, which she doesn't do very often. How you doing?
I'm good.
I have to start out too saying she is the author of a book as well, How to what?
The making of a dream girl.
The making of a dream girl. I
Yes.
was thinking the money, how to make millions, but the making of
Yes,
the dream
it's
girl.
how to make millions in real estate.
Okay, how to make millions in
That's the
real estate.
subtitle.
Okay, Queen. So we know about you because you've been on the show for many, many years, almost since we launched. But I'm interested in hearing what's behind the throne, what's behind the crown. Who is Queen Claudine Ellis? And so, from what we know on the surface, you obviously own Dream Girls of Real Estate. And by the way, how's that going? And how is real estate? Whose market is it? Give us the basics.
Real estate is real estate. It has its own ebbs and flows. I mean, it's cyclical, like anything. And any business is like that. If you sell pizza, it doesn't matter. You have days that are great, days that aren't. You have upsides, downsides. There's all kinds of things happen. We had COVID. I mean, you just go with the flow. It's a business where everyone I know and everyone you know, I believe, lives indoors.
Yeah, that's true.
You're standing on real estate.
Hopefully we do. But what about the rates? And are you concerned about anything that's going on with politics and how it might impact the real estate market?
Everything impacts everything. So if the market is up or down based on what someone feels, that's how it's. If there's low demand or high products, or it's all about supply, demand. It's also about feelings. It's about, like you said, rates. All of it ties in together. So back in the 80s, you had 18% interest rate. How do we feel? We bought houses.
We did.
We had interest rates at 2%. We bought houses.
Yes, we did.
We got them now at 6 and 7. We bought houses. So I think it just depends on area. It depends on people's feelings. You're always going to hear the media spin it. Oh, people are on the fence, or oh, no one's buying. It's not true. Nothing you hear in the media is true. There's
nothing.
Truth.
I think there's some truth, but you have to be able to analyze which part is true and which part is not true. And it depends on what media you're listening to.
It's true. I think what happens with the media spin is that if the rates go up, there's a scare. That's what I mean by it's not true. It went up, but how much did it affect the majority? It may affect a small group, it may affect a few, but it's not going to affect everyone because we still live indoors, right?
Okay.
And you hear, oh, there's high foreclosures. Okay, they are, but investors are going to buy those, right? So we're still selling. The market is still moving. You hear crashes and everything. You hear crashes in stock markets. You hear crashes in real estate. We've had 2006, 7, 8, and 9. It was horrible as far as crashes, but sales did not stop. So it's kind of like, it's a perspective.
Well, I appreciate you tapping in on your expertise.
Yes.
Now I want to turn to the question that I told you that I've always wanted to ask, because you have this Harvard degree, and I'm like, how does Harvard mix with real estate? Because you don't have to go to Harvard to be a real estate agent. You don't even really have to go to college.
That's correct.
So I'm just wondering how you landed after attending Harvard to doing your own real estate company.
So let me just go by why I even went and got a Harvard degree per se, and why Harvard. Well, first of all, let me go way back. Let's go back to birth. When I was a young child living in New York, my parents are immigrants, and I consider myself a basement baby. I lived in the basement. It's 5 kids. My parents are immigrants. We all went to private school, and I never really thought I was going to go to college. And my first real job after high school was actually on Wall Street at JP and Chase. It was a pretty big job. I was a little person, but I was dressed up all grown, and I thought I was somebody, and I would go to work. And then life happened, and I said, well, I'm going to go ahead. And actually, Chase offered, JP Morgan at the time, offered us to go to college classes. So I took a few classes because it was free, and I kind of liked it. It was cool. I learned some things. I was like, okay, I could do this. So going to college wasn't going to be foreign to me, right? So when I came to Virginia to visit my grandmother, and I said, I'm just going to go to the school up the street, which was Norfolk State.
Okay, so that's how you ended up being in Norfolk State, because you were in New York.
I was. I went to school up the street. And then while I was there, I started meeting some really nice people. One with your dad, Dr. Thelma Thompson, all the English department, of course, Dr. Carroll, bless his heart, rest his soul, he's passed away. And then Dr. L.D. Britt at the time was the rector of the board. And so as I'm doing my thing and people are talking to me and like, what are you gonna do after? And I'm like, I don't know. They're like, but you really are bright. You should do this, that, and the third. And then I think
you were doing excellent in your class. You had a 4.0.
Yes.
You were an outstanding student,
Yes.
and you were exceptional. So
That's
let's
what they
talk
said.
about that first. Now, and they
That's
were like, "What are you
said.
going to do?"
What are you going to do? And I'm like, I'm hosting shows, and I think I host your dad's retirement or whatever.
Okay.
I've done a whole bunch of things, and everybody was knowing me on campus, but I wasn't really involved in their thing. I was more or less doing my own. I was sort of monolithic, just get my grades in and making sure I was an entrepreneur / philanthropist type person. I did my own thing. So Dr. L.D. Britt came to me one day and he goes, "You're going to Harvard. That's what you're doing." I was like, yeah, whatever.
Because he went to Harvard. L.D. Britt is the, I think his title is still chief surgeon at EVMS.
That's correct. He's one of the top, he has another name, but he's the big man over
Yeah,
there. Yes.
right.
And so when he tells you to do stuff, you kind of just do it. You don't,
Right.
I was pretty much intimidated by everybody in administration, your dad, him, everybody. They were all intimidating to me, but it was a good intimidation. It wasn't like a negative thing. It was more or less that I looked up to them and respected them. So I talked to Dr. Carroll, and Dr. Carroll says, "Oh, we're going to get this done." And I did, and I went back to Dr. Britt, and I said, "I did everything. I just need my letter." And he gave me the letter, and most people were not as encouraging. Some people were saying to me, they think you're bright. I think you're bright, but you should look into other options because it's kind of hard to get in there, and it's really going to be challenging for you.
And I think they probably were talking about Harvard, not only, going to school and taking the classes, but it is challenging just to navigate the campus because it's just very different. My brother went there and to law school, but it's just very, especially as an African American woman.
Yeah. And then the cost.
Oh, yeah, there's that.
You got to live there. You have to get a place to live. You have to, spend the money. You have to pay the tuition. And for me, I worked. So luckily I had some funds. But, yeah, it's very expensive, and you have to do what you have to do.
So was it like when you got there, I know even at UVA, there are those that are saying you don't deserve to be here, or, at that time the buzzword was affirmative action. Now it's DEI. People saying, "Oh, are you an athlete?" And it's like, no, I have an academic achievement award. It's totally academics.
Yeah.
So did people hit you with that at all while you were at Harvard?
Well, I want to say one thing about Harvard that most people probably already know. Harvard does not make you a person. They only hire talent, right? They're looking for talent. So you already have to come ready-made. You're not going to get there and become something better. Most of the people that I met were big time already, like literally owned schools and books, and they were out there doing great things.
They were doing they were students.
They were these people were like, I was so intimidated by them. But we did have a Black student union that was formed because some of the other influences were saying that we were taking their proverbial spots.
And you found that not to be true.
No, because I ended up working at admissions. I wanted a job where I could kind of figure that out and kind of get nosy and look into the paperwork and dig deeper.
Because you have a degree in communications, don't
do.
you? There you go. So the journalist was in there.
I was
you
like,
were doing an investigative report.
I'm about to find out. Did I get in because I'm of color?
Right. Okay, actually, what'd you find?
By the way, I like the word colored. And the reason why I like the word colored is because we all are colored. No one's white, no one's black, right? We are colored. I don't know why they took away that term.
I don't like it.
We're different colors.
Yeah, well, if you say different colors, that's fine, but don't call me
in
colored.
Africa, we're colored.
Well, that's Africa. We're in the United States, but we can debate that at another time.
That's another show.
You want to be, look, I'm called April, you're called Queen, so, we can all define how we want to be called.
That's it. But nonetheless.
So what'd you find out in the admissions office?
Well, when I went to admissions, I learned that there are different piles. So the first pile is to make sure that anybody with certain names are not included in the pool. So
and what names were those?
Kennedy, Rockefeller, Carnegie, those. Right. Those names. There are others, but there's a list. And if those names came up, we had to look at those applications differently. Because I think, in my mind, this is what I think, the people who apply with those names do not want to get into the school because of their name.
Because we debated this earlier, because usually it's ushered in. So even when you are applying for a job and somebody there, you apply the regular route, but you also get it ushered in. But apparently, maybe
if they were
in,
I don't know. Okay. I just know because remember those names come with money. Right. Harvard is one of the most well-endowed schools, bigger than even the country. I mean, they have more money than cities, countries, and states. I mean, they just are rich, right? Yeah. And they've been doing this for, 3 million years. So that is why they handle maybe those a little bit different.
Okay, so how are the other ones distributed?
So they'll go in different piles of like, well, first everything that comes in, they open them up and they put them in alphabetical order, and then they look at the schools people come from. They look at the letters, read the letters to hear about the letters. And at the time when I was there, you did not put down your race, or if you did, you didn't have to put it down. So if a person wrote a letter and they said, yeah, I was walking barefoot in China, then I might know they're Chinese. Otherwise, you would not know.
Or if you look at their name, unless they used an Americanized
Well, here's the kicker.
Okay.
That's another thing. If you thought the person's name was Chin, they could be Asian, but they also could be Jamaican. In Jamaica, there's a heavy influence of Chinese and Indian.
Okay.
So that person could have been black.
Right.
So it was kind of hard to do that. Even if it was Hispanic names, those could be Filipinos.
Exactly.
There's a lot of different.
Give me the overall synopsis of what your takeaway was from your investigation.
My investigation was that there was a sheet, and the sheet had everything from the categories, what the grade was like, what the SAT and scores were like, or whatever SAT that they took, and it also had where the person's what their letter was about, and all those things had to check off, and you gave it a score. That's how the person got in at the time when I was there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I didn't see any kind of partiality or any kind of favoritism to race.
Okay, so what made you go into real estate then with the Harvard degree? But you did other things before real estate.
I did. So
you used that degree.
Yes. So I always knew I didn't want a job. I'm not cut out for jobs. Jobs are where you go in, someone tells you what to do, and you go with the protocol.
Yes.
I'm going to get fired probably in the first month, because when I go in, I'm going to see it's wrong and what they're doing doesn't make sense. Give them my suggestion. They're not going to listen to me. I'm going to get probably annoyed, and then we're going to have bickering, right? So I like to improve any space I go into. If I touch it, it's going to be better than when I left.
Right.
I don't want it to be the same.
Yeah.
And I'm always evolving, right? So I don't like places like government jobs where everything stays the same. We've been doing it like that for 30 years. It wouldn't work for me. So anyway, I knew I did not want a job, but I knew I needed to buy a home. If I'm going to leave my home where I lived comfortably, I'm not moving into an apartment.
Right.
So when I left my home comfortably, I needed a house. So in order to get a house, I had to have a job. So I took a job.
Okay.
And I got a house.
For the period of time that you needed to get a house.
Yes. Yeah. And I needed another house. So
so did you start doing houses, and that's how you got into real estate?
Yes. So I bought the house. I got the real estate, license. And as soon as I was able to get the second house, I was able to leave the job. So I was making a lot of money that I could stash away, because you just can't leave without having money aside.
Yeah.
And I make good money in real estate, so I was making sure that I had my little stash so I could go, and I had good credit, so I had everything I needed. And I borrowed against one of my houses. I had 2 houses when I quit, and borrowed against one so I could have cash on hand to do, more investing.
How did you know to do that? Because we don't really have like classes in financial literacy now. How did you know that you could do that, and you could borrow money against, one house and get another and all of that? And what do you think it will take for people to learn that is a way to, one, own property, and two, get rich?
Well, the funny part is my parents, either they're accidentally smart about financial stuff, or they had a plan. I don't think they had a plan. So I told you before, I was a basement baby. I lived in the basement my whole life, and my parents rented out the 2 top parts of the brownstone, right?
So they sacrificed.
I don't even know if they thought it was sacrifice. That's what I said.
Yeah,
they
if
might
they're
have
living
been
in the basement, they were sacrificing. They rented out the top levels. Those were
yeah.
the better levels. You all were in the basement, so they sacrificed.
It might sound like sacrifice, but I think in their mind that's just the way you do it. My grandmother lived in the basement too, so it's not like it was like you live there and the other people are going to take care of all of your expenses. Because if you live up there and the basement is smaller, you can make more money if you rent those 2 places, right? Now, they fixed the basement up. It wasn't just a big dungeon, a hole. It had rooms and kitchen and everything. My mom did hair. I remember my hair in the basement. I remember getting the hot comb and all that. It was like living upstairs, but it was in the basement.
Gotcha.
It wasn't the same. You didn't have the same type of entrance. You had to go through the basement to get up. It was different, But I didn't think of me living in a basement. I never knew. I was a kid. I didn't care about anything but being a kid, right? So I didn't know what it was like to feel like you lived in a basement. It's like being black. I don't know what it's like to be black until I get to a place where they say, you're black, right? And I'm like, I am? What does that mean? It's a thing. So it's a thing if you know it's a thing. It didn't seem like a thing to me that I lived in a basement my whole life.
So in your book, you tell people how to make millions in real estate.
Yes.
What's the one takeaway in a sentence, 1 minute?
On how to make millions is to buy real estate. I mean, I don't know if you know who my mentor is, but you've heard of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? Well, the rich dad was John Burley, and the poor dad was Robert Kiyosaki's father. Well, John Burley and I met in Phoenix, Arizona some years ago, probably in 2011, and we chatted, and he said to me, here's how you can do things. And he told me what to do, and I pretty much just did it.
You followed it.
And followed it. Basically, if you want $1 million, borrow $1 million. I'm like, what does that mean? That means if you borrow it, someone pays it back, it then becomes yours. So it allows me to go out and buy things and get other people to pay it. And what better way to do it than to provide housing?
Yeah. Well, you got to read the book. The last question, because we're out of time,
Yes.
is what is, and in this point in your life, where you are now and what you're doing, what is the secret to life?
Wow. The secret of life is to do the right thing. Know that when you look in the mirror, the man in the mirror, that you can be happy with that, and you can go to sleep every night knowing that you did things with integrity. And the other thing is giving back. I always love to give back. If I could continue to give and help others, I've done every possible charity I could give. I've volunteered doing everything. I'll put on events just to help others. And I think that when you help people get what they want, you get what you want.
And they say that makes you a happier person than making money. So
I am very happy. I never want to work for money again.
Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Queen
Thank
Claudine
you.
Ellis, for being with us. And thank you for joining us for another episode of Virginia Insider. Until next time, I'm April Woodard.